So that was Occupy Wall Street here in D.C. through the eyes of Joel Northam. But with the 6-month anniversary coming up tomorrow, we wanted to talk to others as well. Joining us here at RT, J.A. Myerson. He's been covering the movement extensively. He's a contributor at truthout.org and joins me now from the birthplace of the movement, New York City, to talk more about how this movement has changed and where he thinks it's headed. J.A., there are a lot of people who look around and see an empty Zuccotti Park, an almost empty McPherson Square, who say 6 months later, Occupy Wall Street is dead. What's your response?
I think that that wonderful segment with Joel, who I got to spend a little bit of time with when I was down in D.C., got it exactly right, which is that the occupation was the first project in a long social movement. Montgomery bus boycott was in 1955, and it wasn't until 64 and 65 that we started getting the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act. These things take a long time, and they require a lot of different campaigns and a lot of different projects if the people committed to the movement really want to institute some fundamental changes, like happened in the civil rights movement or the women's rights movement or the labor movement. And so I think that it's right to conceive of the occupations as the first project in what will actually be a really long social movement, a decade long at least, to try and really achieve some fundamental change in the way that business is done in the United States and all over the world.
But I do have to say, I mean, having those visuals sort of in your face, having, Occupy K Street here in Washington, literally on K Street where all the lobbyists are, having it in your face made people talk about it, certainly. People do talk about it a little less, both in the mainstream media, in the alternative media, and just sort of by the water cooler. What do you think, from what you've researched, from the people that you're talking to, what kind of things can we expect to see in the coming weeks?
It's a great question, and it's a little bit difficult to answer because there are things that we know are going to happen, right? We know there will probably be protests at the G8 summit in Camp David or outside of Camp David. I doubt the protesters will be let into Camp David. But also at the NATO summit in Chicago, there will probably be protests at both of the Democratic and Republican national conventions this summer. There's going to be a big May Day celebration. So there are things that we definitely know about, and those anyone can go online and find out. But to me, the most interesting things will be what we can't predict. I mean, Attorney General Eric Schneiderman's task force might roll out indictments, and that might provoke protests. We don't know exactly what's going to happen with Greece and the Eurozone. If some horrible thing happens to that currency, that will have big reverberations in the United States. If Bank of America becomes insolvent, that will have huge reverberations. It may trigger another bailout, which may trigger more austerity, which may trigger worse conditions and repeat the whole thing. So there are a lot of things that we're not sure about. Of course, Israel could attack Iran and throw the oil market and the commodities market into complete chaos. There are so many things that are sort of at nearly a boiling point right now that if they bubbled over could really have major reverberating effects and provoke a lot more radicalism in the streets than we've seen so far.
Let me throw a little bit of a curveball at you and just ask you, you're a journalist, I'm your editor just for the moment, and I say, all right, J.A., you need to write a history today, right now, this moment, of the first 6 months of Occupy Wall Street. What would it include?
It would include, I've sort of done this. I'm working on a book right now about 2011, sort of people's history of 2011. I would say that it would need to include a background on the financial crash and the Bush years, the sort of unbelievable levels of corruption and graft that took place then. It would have to include the Obama campaign that everyone was very excited about in my generation, and then once they realized that it was still business as usual, they got disenchanted with the political system. And then it would require going into what happened around the world, especially the Arab Spring, but also in Greece and Spain and in England and all over the place. And then finally we get to Zuccotti Park, September, and then we get to the sort of growth of that movement, the first initial police crackdowns that sort of exploded the coverage of the thing, the big march on the Brooklyn Bridge, the labor unions and other community organizations joining up for a huge march that ended with more police crackdowns, the expansion to all over the place, DC, and Oakland, as you well know, and Chicago, and all over the place, Tacoma, Washington, and Schenectady, New York, every tiny little towns the attempted eviction of Zuccotti Park in October, and then subsequently on October 15th, the absolute explosion of the movement across the world, Tokyo, Rome, everywhere, Times Square got shut down, and then we would go into the real backlash, you know, Scott Olson being shot in the face in Oakland and sent into intensive care, the breakups of a lot of the encampments, and then the what life has been like post-occupation with
I think
a lot of foreclosure resistance and things like that.
I think, too, just seeing that apathy, in fact, is not dead in this country has been pretty inspiring to a lot of people to witness as this does continue. J.A. Meyerson, contributor for TruthOut.org.